Hello and welcome. So for a few days I've been talking about the examples Jesus gave in his parables of very small things which had a point to make about the kingdom. And yesterday I was musing about the reading that my husband and I had in our daily readings, which is in John 2, the marriage at Cana. I'm sure most of you know the story of the marriage of Cana. It was very early on. Jesus had just met with Andrew and Peter and Philip and Nathaniel. That lovely chapter 1 of John, talking about the light, the life of the Word being the light of men. And John the Baptist's testimony about Jesus. And then Jesus and his followers, those who were with him, and his mother were invited to a marriage feast. And I think there's you must have heard sermons on this story. They ran out of wine, and Mary told them to ask Jesus, and Jesus told them to fill these enormous jars, cleansing jars, with water, and they filled them right to the brim. And I don't know what your measurements are, whether you're measuring litres or gallons or pints, but look it up on Google if you want to find out how much it was. But they were enormous. They carried each about 20 to 30 gallons. I don't know what that is in litres, but if you look it up, Google will tell you how much it is. But there were 6 of them. They were massive, absolutely massive. And then when they drew the water and gave it to the steward of the feast, when Jesus told them to, it turned into wine. And in John we see not parables. John doesn't retell the parables, but he uses things that happened to tell us something about Jesus and about God. They were called signs. And if you look through John's Gospel, there aren't any parables in John's Gospel. But there are these living parables, these signs. And this is a sign. And here we are. We reach the point in the feast when everyone has had quite something to drink. And the steward of the feast calls the bridegroom and says to him, "Every man serves the good wine first, but you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus turned the water into wine. And there's been lots of preaching about it, lots of thinking about it. It tells us lots of things about God and about Jesus. If Jesus was the sort of person that sometimes he's portrayed as being, he would not have been invited to a wedding feast. He would have been a killjoy. People would have had to stand on ceremony when he was around. If he was a religious kind of person, you wouldn't invite the high priest to a wedding feast, because it would kind of change the celebration. Jesus was a good guy to have around. He was a wonderful person to have around in every event of life. And it shows God's generosity. It shows that God is not a killjoy. God is not against alcohol. But he's not against enjoying yourself. He's not against celebrations. There are a lot of celebrations in Scripture, a lot of feasts in Scripture. But as we were reading it yesterday, and this thing that was said by the steward, every person serves the good wine first, and when men have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the best wine until now. Whatever God gives is the best. Whatever he gives to us is the best for us. He knows what we need, and he is generous. He's not stingy or niggardly. You know, there are some people who take verses like, my God will supply all your needs, to say he'll supply what you need, but he won't supply what you want. And I think that's nitpicking. There's nothing about Scripture that tells us that God gives in a miserly way. We have plenty. We have plenty and to spare. But what spoke to me yesterday, I'm getting to it, was this idea that the good wine, the best wine, had been kept till last. And that there was wine, and it was nice. It wasn't, they didn't serve rough wine to begin with. It was a wedding. And I was thinking how it parallels with the story of the wicked tenants, which is in Luke 20, verse 9 following, which tells the story about the man who went away and he left tenants looking after his vineyard, and he sent people to collect the benefit, the fruit of the vineyard. Periodically he sent people, and they were beaten and sent away empty-handed. And the last thing he sent was his son. He said, if I send my son, surely they'll respect him. And they killed him. And then the owner of the vineyard had to deal with them. And I was thinking, in that story, again, God sent and sent and sent again. And his final sending was the best, his son. And here there was wine, there was plenty of wine, but the final thing that Jesus gave them was the best. And I think it felt like to me in a real way, this was saying what God has done. That over the years, God has sent messengers. Beginning of Hebrews says, in many and various ways, God has spoken to people in the past. But in these days, his final word is his son. So there was wine and plenty. But when it ran out, God gave his best. God gave his best to us when all the other attempts to reach people's hearts and minds had failed. God sent his son. And like here, the wine was finished. And God turned ordinary water into wine. And here, I think at the beginning of his ministry, John is saying, God has turned this carpenter, this man, this ordinary man who'd never done any miracles yet, into the very best, into the wine of his ministry. It spoke to me yesterday, and I thought I'd share it with you. Think about it today, and I hope it blesses you. That is John chapter 2, verses 1 to 11. God bless you. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.